everybody. Welcome back. It is October 12th, 2020. Today is Monday, and last Wednesday we had the vice presidential debate. And it wasn't as exciting, I guess you could say, as the first debate, with the presidential debate, and there weren't as many notable moments. But I do want to take this opportunity to look through the debate really question by question. I'm going to be going through every single question because Mike Pence, this is sort of like a clinic on how to avoid answering any question. It's actually amazing. I lost count just even, I went through question by question here on my little notes that I have over here, and I didn't count it, but it took about, I'd say maybe 7, 8 questions before Pence finally answered a question, and then the question that he did answer was horrible. And then we'll get to that. There were not that many notable moments, so unlike the first debate in which I didn't really go through it piece by piece, I kind of just brought you the highlights. So, but this one we're going to be talking about every single question and pretty much how Pence avoided every question. Now, Kamala also dodged some questions, and I will be showing clips of that, and I will be talking about it. But it was just completely night and day with Pence and Kamala. Several times throughout the debate, Pence went back and said, or Pence answered a question by saying, "That's a great question, and I appreciate that, but I would like to answer the last question." And then he went on to answer a version of the last question, which wasn't even asked. But let's just get right into it. So I don't have a clip of this first one, but Kamala was asked the first question about what would a Biden administration have done differently, and she mostly spent she got and so each person got about 2 minutes to answer the question. And Kamala spent like the first minute and 30 seconds just railing on Trump and how bad of a job they did. And right before her time was up, she said, "We will do national contact tracing, national testing, and we'll make sure the vaccine is free for everybody in Biden administration." So she just straight up answered the first question, although she did spend a large amount of the first question just railing on how bad of a job the Trump administration did. So the next question was for Mike Pence, and the question was a perfect question that, for some reason, nobody in the media has been asking, and this is something I've been wondering for a long time. Not wondering, but wondering why isn't this more prevalent? Why isn't the Trump administration receiving this line of question more often? And that is, why is it that as compared to every other developed nation, our death rate for coronavirus is much higher, much, much higher. And let me show you how Mike Pence answered that question.
You head the administration's coronavirus task force. Why is the U.S. death toll as a percentage of our population higher than that of almost every other wealthy country? And you have 2 minutes to respond without interruption.
Susan, thank you. And I want to thank the Commission and the University of Utah for hosting this event. And Senator Harris, it's a privilege to be on the stage with you. Our nation has gone through a very challenging time this year. But I want the American people to know that from the very first day, President Donald Trump has put the health of America first. Before there were more than 5 cases in the United States, all people who had returned from China, President Donald Trump did what no other American president had ever done. And that was he suspended all travel from China, the second largest economy in the world. Now, Senator Joe Biden opposed that decision. He said it was xenophobic and hysterical. But I can tell you, having led the White House Coronavirus Task Force, that decision alone by President Trump bought us invaluable time to stand up the greatest national mobilization since World War II. And I believe it saved hundreds of thousands of American lives.
This is a strategy often employed by politicians, and I'm only going to mention this once just because it happens so often, but politicians will answer the question in such a way to make you forget even what the question was. Like, can you think to yourself, what was even the question there? Unless you were looking at the video and you saw at the bottom. The question was, why is our death toll so much higher? Now, I just showed you a small clip there, but he did not answer it for the rest of the time he had. He pretty much just talked about China, and then he repeated the lie about China's ban, or about the China travel ban. That I've debunked this so many times on this channel. I feel like a broken record. Joe Biden never called the ban hysterical or xenophobic, and then he also repeated the lie that, it's just lie after lie after lie. He also repeated the lie that Trump completely banned all travel from China. That is a lie. There were still planes coming in from China several weeks after the ban was in place. Okay, next one. Pence asked, how can the American people be expected to follow the regulations that the White House is apparently setting up when there was recently a super spreader event at the Rose Garden in which many people who attended got sick. And look how he answers this question.
You were in the front row in a Rose Garden event 11 days ago at what seems to have been a super spreader event for senior administration and congressional officials. No social distancing, few masks, and now a cluster of coronavirus cases among those who were there. How can you expect Americans to follow the administration's safety guidelines to protect themselves from COVID when you at the White House have not been doing so?
Well, the American people have demonstrated over the last 8 months that when given the facts, they're willing to put the health of their families and their neighbors and people they don't even know first. President Trump and I have great confidence in the American people and their ability to take that information and put it into practice.
Yeah, so he spends that entire question, that entire answer pretty much repeating the same Republican personal responsibility line we've been hearing for decades, that, you know what, we're all about freedom and we're all about letting people make the decisions. And the American people actually care about others, even though it's largely Republicans who refuse to wear masks or wear masks incorrectly or have protested the usage of masks. And then once he has run out of time, he then decides to try to answer the question, and he still does not answer the question directly.
Upon us, and the president introduced Judge Amy Coney
Yes,
Barrett.
thank you, Vice
But
President
at
Pence.
that, if I may say, that Rose Garden event, there's been a great deal of speculation about it. My wife Karen and I were there and honored to be there. Many of the people who were at that event, Susan, actually were tested
Yes.
for coronavirus, and it was an outdoor event, which all of our scientists regularly and routinely advise. The difference here is President Trump and I trust the American people.
Yeah, so as you heard there, he said, well, actually, many of the people, but not all of the people, many of the people there were tested for coronavirus, and it was an outdoor event. And okay, but if you saw pictures from the Rose Garden event that was thought to be the super spreader event, you know that there was people were sitting shoulder to shoulder. The majority of people were not wearing masks, and the fact that many people had been tested is totally irrelevant when not everybody has been tested and not everybody's wearing masks and there's no social distancing. So he didn't answer the question as to why Americans should listen when they are not taking the recommendations that even they made. So another dodge question by Pence. Now here's an example of what answering a question looks like.
Vaccinated. But half of Americans now say they wouldn't take a vaccine if it was released now. If the Trump administration approves a vaccine before or after the election, should Americans take it, and would you take it?
If the public health professionals, if Dr. Fauci, if the doctors tell us that we should take it, I'll be the first in line to take it. Absolutely. But if Donald Trump tells us that we should take it, I'm not taking it.
Vice President Pence.
There you go. That's it. That's easy. Just answer the question just straight up and then move on to whatever it is else you want to talk about. But I think actually the moderator went on to ask Pence a question. That's just simply how you answer a question as it was asked. Okay. Now, next, and that was only the second question that Kamala was asked. Pence is asked next if there's a plan in place. Now, they are both asked this. If there's a plan in place because Trump and Biden are either one of them are going to be the oldest president in history. If there's a plan in place in case there's some sort of medical emergency, in case the president is unable to lead the country, now they both dodged this question, and it's an important question though, and I think it was one that they should have answered. But let's listen to what Pence had to say first, and then we'll listen to Kamala.
Pence, have you had a conversation or reached an agreement with President Trump about safeguards or procedures when it comes to the issue of presidential disability? And if not, do you think you should? You have 2 minutes without interruption.
Well, Susan, thank you, although I would like to go back.
I think we need to move on
well,
to the
thank
issue
you,
of
but I would like to
vice
go back
presidency.
because the reality is that we're going to have a vaccine, Senator, in record time.
So again, he dodged the question, but Kamala also dodged the question, but she dodged it in a completely different way.
A vaccine.
Senator Harris, let me ask you the same question that I asked
Sure.
Vice President Pence, which is, have you had a conversation or reached an agreement with Vice President Biden about safeguards or procedures when it comes to the issue of presidential disability? And if not, and if you win the election next month, do you think you should? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
So let me tell you, first of all, the day I got the call from Joe Biden, it was actually a Zoom call. asking me to serve with him on this ticket was probably one of the most memorable days of my life. I thought about my mother, who came to the United States at the age of 19.
Yeah, so she talks about her mother, and then she goes on to talk about her qualifications. They both dodged this question. This was the first question that Kamala had completely dodged, even though I showed you that. Pence has now dodged 3 questions in a row. All right? So next, Pence is asked if the president should be transparent about his health, and this is due to something I sort of talked about in my last show about, or my last episode, about how the president's physician, Sean Connolly, is not directly answering questions to the press about Trump's health. And they asked, well, what was the lowest his oxygen levels are? They said, oh, well, they didn't drop below 90 this morning and last night. Okay, well, what were the lowest they were? Oh, well, they've never been below this amount in this past few days. So they don't answer the question directly, and so that leads a lot of people to believe that they're hiding something. And so the moderator asks, should there be more transparency about the health and about the president's health? And Pence dodges this question also.
And my question to each of you in turn is this information voters deserve to know? Vice President Pence, would you like to go first?
Well, Susan, thank you. And let me say, on behalf of the President and the First Lady, how moved we've all been by the outpouring of prayers and concern for the President. And I do believe it's emblematic of the prayers and the concern that have ushered forth for every American impacted.
Yeah. And then, so again, about halfway through his answer, he does sort of kind of answer the question, although not really. So let's take a look at that.
But the care the President received at Walter Reed Hospital, the White House doctors, was exceptional. And the transparency that they practiced all along the way will continue. The American people have a right to know about the health and well-being of their president, and we'll continue to do that.
So he says, we will continue to be transparent. We will continue to let the American people know because they have a right. Well, you weren't transparent. And we're asking, should the American people know these things while your administration is dodging it? So, I don't think this is answering the question. You might be watching this and say, well, he might have just said 3 words or like 5 words and said the American people have the right to know about the president's health. And that's answering to me, that doesn't qualify as answering the question, especially when you spend the rest of your time not answering it. And we know, and we have clips of the White House physician, or about the president's physician, not directly answering question. But if you want to count that as Pence's first answer to anything, okay, fine. I might give that to you, but to me that doesn't count. Okay. So for this next one, Kamala is asked the same question.
Under the same question I asked, which is, do voters have a right to know more detailed health information about presidential candidates, and especially about presidents, especially when they're facing some kind of challenge?
Absolutely, and that's why Joe Biden has been so incredibly transparent, and certainly by contrast, the president has not.
Yeah, so just directly answering the question, not filibustering for the first minute about, I don't know, whatever it is that Pence was talking about, and then deciding to somewhat answer the question. She just says, absolutely, we should have detailed information. And Trump has not released detailed information. Just his physician has had some press conferences where he indirectly answers some questions. So that she just answered the question straight up. There's nothing else to say about it. And then she answered the question first, and then later, for the rest of her 2 minutes, answer, she talked about how Trump has not been transparent with his taxes, which is exactly how you look like you're answering a question and actually answering the question, and then talking about an issue that's fresh on the voter's mind that is an attack on your opponent, because this is essentially what it is. You're trying to one up these things are performative, okay? You're trying to one up your opponent here on the debate stage. So whether they answer a question or not is not necessarily the issue. It's just about who looks the best, and I hate that that's the case. But that's essentially what works on people, and that's essentially. But for me, I want the answers to questions. But when people, the majority of the population, are watching this, they're just going to walk away thinking whoever won was the one who looked the best, and whoever got the most jabs in that worked. Okay, so there has to be some of that. Okay. For this next one, Pence is asked if the recovery will take a year or more. And again, he dodges this question as well.
Your administration has been predicting a rapid and robust recovery. But the latest economic report suggests that's not happening. Should Americans be braced for an economic comeback that is going to take not months, but a year or more? You have 2 minutes to answer uninterrupted.
When President Trump and I took office, America had gone through the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression. It's when Joe Biden was vice president, they tried to tax and spend and regulate and bail our way back to a growing economy. President Trump cut taxes across the board, despite what Senator Harris.
So he's asked, will the economic recovery take a year or longer? And he doesn't answer the question, as I show you. He goes on to talk about the tax cuts. You kind of got a little glimpse of that Trump has implemented, even though that was before the pandemic. And then he goes on to talk about how Joe Biden wants to implement the Green New Deal and abolish fossil fuels, which I don't even feel like I have to debunk. This has just been debunked so many times on mainstream media and on independent media. Like, it's just not true. I don't know if I can add anything to that would be valuable. It's just simply not true. So again, another dodge question by Pence. How many is it at this point? I'm not keeping track because it's just way too many. Okay, and then Pence after this is asked again. Not asked again. He's asked another question. Does human-caused climate change cause natural events to be more deadly?
And Vice President Pence, I'd like to pose the first question to you. This year, we've seen record-setting hurricanes in the South. Another one, Hurricane Delta, is now threatening the Gulf. And we have seen record-setting wildfires in the West. Do you believe, as the scientific community has concluded, that man-made climate change has made wildfires bigger, hotter, and more deadly, and have made hurricanes wetter, slower, and more damaging? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Thank you, Susan. Well, first, I'm very proud of our record on the environment and on conservation. According to all of the best estimates, our air and land are cleaner than any time ever recorded. And our water is among the cleanest in the world. And just a little while ago, the President signed the Outdoors Act. It's the largest investment in our public lands and public parks.
So, doesn't answer the question. Again, like I showed you, he repeats later the Green New Deal line again, that Joe Biden wants a Green New Deal and Kamala wants to implement the Green New Deal, even though that is not true. And then he goes on to say there are no more hurricanes today than there were 100 years ago, which is actually true, but hurricanes are much more severe today. And he doesn't address that, which was literally the question. Why are natural disasters more severe and deadly today, or are they caused by human-caused climate change? For them to be more deadly? Is that causing them to be more deadly? And he doesn't answer the question at all. Of course not. Although, that's just typical of Republicans. I don't even know if that's unique to this administration. Okay, so Kamala has asked next how the Green New Deal is used as a framework for their plan. So they don't want to implement the Green New Deal, they being the Biden administration, but they have said, and they say on their website, that the Green New Deal is a crucial framework for how they need to deal with this issue. So she's asked, how is the Green New Deal framework? And she doesn't answer this question. Again, this is only the second question that is not answered by Kamala. She goes on to outline their own healthcare plan, but doesn't directly answer the question. I don't have a clip of this, but doesn't directly answer the question of how is the Green New Deal used as a framework. She just says, well, this is our healthcare plan, this is our climate plan, and this is what we're trying to do. Okay, so next, so she dodged that question. So that's second dodge question by Kamala. Next, Pence is asked, is climate change an existential threat? And what do you think is going to happen? Let's find out.
Vice President Pence, do you believe that climate change poses an existential threat?
As I said, Susan, the climate is changing. We'll follow the science. But once again, Senator Harris is denying the fact that they're going to raise taxes on every American. Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that on day one he was going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. Those tax cuts delivered $2,000 in tax relief to the average family of four across America.
Our tax cuts were the best middle-class tax cuts in a long time. We delivered $2,000 to the average American family. What was the question? Do you remember what the question was? The question was, is climate change an existential threat? And then so he talks about the tax cuts, and then he goes on to say, we don't need a Green New Deal. Okay, and nobody's trying to implement the Green New Deal who's actually in any position of power who's on the ballot this November, so completely irrelevant. So next, both of them are asked, "What is our relationship with China?" And they both dodged the question. I don't have a clip of that. Just they both dodged that question as well. So this is now 8 dodged questions in a row for Mike Pence, and this is 3 dodged questions for Kamala, although they are not consecutive. Okay, and then next, Pence is asked what Indiana would do if Roe v. Wade were overturned in the new Supreme Court that will most likely have Amy Coney Barrett in it, and she's expressed anti-Roe v. Wade sentiments in the past, which would pretty much hand the issue of abortion to states, and then states would be able to determine their own abortion laws. And he obviously does not answer the question. Let's take a look.
On Monday, the Senate Judiciary Committee is scheduled to open hearings on Amy Coney Barrett's nomination to the Supreme Court. Senator Harris, you'll be there as a member of the committee. Her confirmation would cement the court's conservative majority and make it likely open to more abortion restrictions, even to overturning the landmark Roe v. Wade ruling. Access to abortion would then be up to the states. Vice President Pence, you're the former governor of Indiana. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, what would you want Indiana to do? Would you want your home state to ban all abortions? You have 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
Well, thank you for the question, but I'll use a little bit of my time to respond to that very important issue before. The American people deserve to know Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general, was responsible for the death of hundreds of American service members. When the opportunity came, we saw him headed to Baghdad to kill more Americans. President Trump didn't hesitate, and Qasem Soleimani is gone.
So if you're wondering, wait a minute, wasn't the last question about China? Why are they talking about Qasem Soleimani as being previously mentioned? Look, your guess is as good as mine, okay? These people, both of these people, Kamala and Pence, these are career politicians, okay? And they get so off track with these questions. And if they ever answered every question directly, I mean, it would look horrible for them. I mean, because answering some of these tough questions, there's no good answers for some of these, but obviously one person is dodging the question. The original question from the clip I just showed was, what would Indiana do if Roe v. Wade were overturned on abortion? And he doesn't answer it at all. Okay, so next, Kamala is asked the same question. What would California do? She was she's current senator, of California, although she doesn't write any legislation for the state itself. I guess she's just more of like a leader. So what would she want California to do if Roe v. Wade were overturned? And I don't have a clip of this, but she says she will always fight for a woman's right to choose. And then she spends the rest of her time talking about health care and Amy Coney Barrett's nomination. But she immediately answers the question by saying she's in favor of a woman's right to choose. So she even if you don't want to count that as a direct answer to the moderator's question, okay, I'll give that to you. Sure, maybe count this as a dodged question, but at least she's somewhat tangentially referring to the question, right? Mike Pence didn't even at all spend any time talking about abortion. So there you go. There's another one, another dodge question. I mean, how many is this in a row? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 dodged questions in a row. Unless you want to count one of the earlier questions as not being dodged, and I said that earlier. Okay, fine. Then 8 dodged questions by Pence compared to Kamala's 3. So great job, guys. All right. So next, Pence is asked, how does he intend on protecting pre-existing conditions, which has been an issue for the Trump administration. There was recently a largely symbolic executive order by Trump that protects people with pre-existing conditions, meaning that insurance cannot charge you higher or refuse to cover you if you have some sort of pre-existing conditions. But that's already protected by the Affordable Care Act, which Donald Trump wants to get rid of. So Pence is asked, what will your administration do to protect pre-existing conditions? And can you guess what happens?
Affordable Care Act. So tell us specifically, how would your administration protect Americans with pre-existing conditions to have access to affordable insurance if the Affordable Care Act is struck down?
Well, thank you, Susan. But let me just say, addressing your very first question, I couldn't be more proud to serve as vice president to a president who stands without apology for the sanctity of human life. I'm pro-life. I don't apologize for it.
So if you're keeping track at home, this is now 10 dodged questions in a row. He is asked, what specifically will your administration do to protect pre-existing conditions? And he says, well, Martha, I believe in the sanctity of life. I'm pro-life, and I won't apologize for it. And then later, I don't have a clip of this, but later in his answer, he demands an answer of Kamala of if the Biden administration will try to pack the court. Pack the court means adding more justices to the Supreme Court. And just really think about this for a second. He dodged Martha's question, and then in the middle of his dodging demands that Kamala answer his question. I mean, it's mind-boggling what's happening on this stage, and it's absolutely, and this is 10 dodge questions in a row. But hey, for my Trump supporter fans out there, I have some great news for you. Pence actually answers this next question, but it's a really bad answer. And I mean, this is just so, this is like, you can't come up with a better metaphor for this. They dodged 10 questions, and the very first question he answers, what do you think it's about? Let's listen.
Vice President Pence, let me pose the same question to you. In the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Well, our heart breaks for the loss of any innocent American life. And the family of Breonna Taylor has our sympathies. But I trust our justice system, a grand jury that refused the evidence. And it really is remarkable that as a former prosecutor, you would assume that an impaneled grand jury looking at all the evidence got it wrong. But you're entitled to your opinion, Senator.
The very first question that Mike Pence directly answers in this debate is when he is asked, was justice served to Breonna Taylor? Now, she initially posed this question to, the moderator initially posed this question to Kamala, and Kamala's immediate answer was no, justice was not served. And then she went on to talk about injustice for racial injustice for people in the United States. And then Mike Pence is posed the same question, was justice served? And what does he say? I trust our justice system. And it blows my mind, or I don't know his exact verbiage, that you, Kamala, as a former prosecutor, would insinuate that a jury would have gotten it wrong, which is, it's sort of an indirect answer, but he is answering the question by saying, I do believe justice was served. I trust, when he says, I trust our justice system, and then he says, I don't know how you would think that a impaneled jury could get this wrong. That is saying that, yeah, I do think they made the right decision. So the very first question that Pence directly answers, or sort of somewhat indirectly, although I do think this is a direct answer, is that justice was served in the case of Breonna Taylor. And I've talked about this slightly before, but if you don't know what happened to Breonna Taylor, there was a no-knock warrant that was executed at her boyfriend's apartment. They being police officers, did not announce themselves. They claimed that they did. Breonna Taylor's boyfriend claimed that they didn't. Breonna Taylor's boyfriend then fired one shot at police officers as they broke into the house, and then they fired 20 shots into the apartment, killing Breonna Taylor, who was sleeping at the time. Or she was in her bedroom, I believe. I mean, I don't know if you could have been asleep after the gunshots and the breaking down of the door, but she was in her bed. She was just not doing anything, and the jury decided not to indict any of the police officers or charge them with for the killing of Breonna Taylor. And so the first question he answers is this: that justice was served in the case of Breonna Taylor, and that he trusts our justice system to do the right thing. So this episode and this debate wrap-up, again, I didn't want to do the whole debate or get the highlights because there weren't really that many highlights. I just wanted to highlight the fact that Pence did not answer any question. And these people need to be voted out. They are disgusting. They are a plague in our government. And just now I just showed you, and when they do decide to answer a question, it's to disparage well, I didn't mention this, but he later went on, so he said that he implied that justice was served because he trusts the jury to make the right decision. And then he uses the rest of his time in the answer to condemn the rioting and looting that came from the George Floyd and Breonna Taylor murders by police. so just, I mean, just the worst. I have no words for this. I have no words for this at all. But to end this on a sort of light note, I guess. Uh, the next question, I don't remember. I don't remember what the next question was. But in the middle of Mike Pence's answer, a fly landed on his head, and this was the highlight of. If I had to pick something as the highlight of this debate, this was it. I mean, these other previous 13 clips that I showed you are just depressing. And not really highlights. They're really lowlights of our country, not highlights of this debate. But this is a highlight of the debate. A fly lands on Mike Pence's head, and this took Twitter by storm. And this was apparently a big deal. I mean, it was sort of a lighthearted moment.
And that, as Joe Biden said, that he believes that law enforcement has an implicit bias against minorities is a great insult to the men and women who serve in law enforcement. And I want everyone to know, who puts on the uniform of law enforcement every day, that President Trump and I stand with you.
Now, at the end there, I think when Kamala turned to look at him, her eyes were kind of a little higher than his eye level. So I think she was looking at the fly there. Again, just a little lighthearted moment. I mean, again, this whole thing was just so depressing to watch. No, it's like I'll take a line from the conservatives from the last debate. Nobody won this, and America lost in reality. Although, I mean, just from the standpoint of who answered the questions, not even who gave the best answers or who was right, who answered the most questions objectively, because of everything I showed you, Kamala answered the most questions, and Mike Pence dodged 10 questions in a row. So, I mean, in my opinion, Kamala did the best. Although, I mean, it was just depressing all throughout. Okay, so I just want to give you guys a little update on what's happening in Texas. This is, I guess this will be a two-part show today. It's not going to be too long of an update, but if you remember, I reported on how Greg Abbott is trying to limit county mail-in ballot drop-off locations to one drop-off location per county. I incorrectly said in my first segment where I talked about this that Harris County is the largest county. I said it was the largest county in Texas by landmass. That is obviously not true. I think like 15 seconds after that, I literally said counties out west are larger, and that is true. Counties out west are larger, and they have a larger and they have smaller populations, but they are larger in landmass. Okay, so slight correction there. But for the entire 5 million people that live in Harris County, there's going to be one drop-off mail-in ballot location. And so recently, or not recently, but last week, a judge overturned that decision and said that no, we are not going to do one drop-off per one mail-in ballot drop-off location per county. And then the state of Texas appealed that, and in the appellate court, they decided that they're going to uphold the order by Greg Abbott, which will maintain one drop-off location per county. So that's currently where we're at right now. Obviously, they're expected to appeal this again, and I think the appellate court is going to defer this to a federal court. So again, I don't want to spend too much. This is just a small update on the situation. I don't want to spend too much time on this. But I just want to say some things. If you are voting by mail, although it's unlikely unless you are elderly or out of the country or are disabled in some way. But if you are one of those people and you feel like you might not be able to get your ballot in, again, mail-in ballots, you can still mail it in through the mail. The only reason people would want to do a drop-off is if they want to make sure that their ballot gets to where it needs to go. Some people don't. Some people feel like if they send it through the mail, it might not be safe. I mean, I personally trust our systems, but if our mail system, but if you want to just be absolutely safe, go to one of these drop-off ballot locations, or you can drop it off at your local election office. That is also an option. So you still have options. So don't let this one drop-off ballot location per county discourage you from voting. We need to vote. Everybody needs to go out and vote. Early voting starts tomorrow on Tuesday and goes all the way until October 30th. Okay, so don't let them discourage you. Don't let them do these things. And this is going to be a developing story. I will probably be talking about this again because the appellate court is deferring this to a federal court who's going to rule on if this is legal or not, what the governor is trying to do. Okay, thank you everybody so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that debate wrap-up. Trump has decided to not show up to the next debate, so the debate has been canceled. I'm not sure when the third debate, which I guess will be now be the second debate, will be. But I will be live streaming that. Please follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Texas Progressive, twitch.tv/Texas Progressive. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, share if you like my content. I'm trying to grow my channel. I also made a Patreon recently. I will probably be linking that in this video. And thank you guys so much for watching.